Hello, in this video we're going to have a look at checkboxes and we're going to see what we can do in Selenium in regards to checkboxes. Checkboxes are actually pretty similar to radio boxes. The main difference between a checkbox and a radio box is that you can select multiple checkboxes from a group, whereas you cannot do this for a radio button. So let's get started with our tests. In IntelliJ, I have already made a new test class, radio button check test, and we navigate to the checkbox. Perfect. So similar to what we did in the radio buttons test, and if you did not see that, there's a link in the description. We will first identify the elements. We will check the element. Click it, and we'll actually then assert the element state, meaning is it checked or not checked. Okay, so if we analyze the page a bit, we see here we have a checkbox with ID 1, one with ID 2, and another one with ID number 3. Okay, so let's create for each of them one element. So we do this by making web element. Let's say checkbox 1 driver dot find element by big by ID, and we enter the ID. You can copy paste this 2 times. That was checkbox 2 and checkbox 3, and we do the same here. Perfect until now. Okay, so let's make actually our test. So we click checkbox 1, we click checkbox 2, and we click checkbox 3. This is also possible for radio buttons. However, the assertion that we're going to do is not possible for radio buttons. So let's do assert true that the checkbox 1 is selected, and we're going to do this also for checkbox 2 and checkbox 3. And again, we have here something, we need to do Alt Enter, and now the import has been done for us. Good, let's run this test and see if we have everything running. So that was pretty fast, but I think you might have noticed that all of the items were checked. Let's do actually the opposite right now. We can click the items again. This time we will uncheck them, and we will not do assert true, we'll actually do assert false, which means that the items are not selected anymore. Let's run the test again. That is perfect. So all passed. So far, so good. But as we have seen in the radio buttons, the issues for radio buttons also might apply to checkboxes, or also do apply to checkboxes. The first issue is in the case that we have 50 checkboxes. Well, how do we do or how do we assure that we can click all of the checkboxes, but without having to add such an ID for each of the elements? Well, we can do actually the following. We'll make another method where we will be able to select or to click a checkbox by its ID. So let's do here public void select by ID. Oh, sorry, by index, not ID. And here we have integer index. And let's find a way to select all of these inputs. So this is actually funny to set inputs because this is actually an input. So if we use this tag here in XPath, we will be able to get all of the free inputs. So let's do this and see how it works. So we have a web element checkboxes, and I'm going to driver find elements by XPath. Since we're doing driver find elements, we need to change the web element to a list of web elements. And here we have, so we can do checkbox.get and the item and click. And in this way, we can basically select the items by the index. So let's see if this works. We can just take one from here to select by index, and we're going to give it index number 1. And what should happen here is our test should still pass, because with this code we are selecting or click the second checkbox. Okay, let's run this test. And it seems it all passed. Perfect. We can also write another method, public, like I said, we can select all values. And it is basically a variation of this one, because here we need to do a loop, a for each loop. Instead of a for each, I used a for loop, a normal for loop. I'm going to show you the for each in the next for the next method. So what we're basically doing here is we're clicking or we're selecting all of the values that have the input. So then we can actually let me just comment this out. And we can actually simulate that part with just this function. Let's run it and see if it works. Okay, that seems to have fixed the issue. Perfect. There's one last thing which I want to see here, and that is how can we select specific checkboxes based on their value. So imagine that instead of checkbox number 1, you would have here I know this is a test or text, whatever. So you want maybe to have a test where you select only that specific checkbox based on its text. So the way which I'm going to show you basically implies a for each loop. And what we will do is we're going to identify this element here via the class, and that is identifies all of the elements. We're going to check for the text of the element, and if the text matches the text that we are searching for, we're going to click the input that is above it, or that is part of it, to be more precise. Okay, so let's do this here. I'm going to make another class, public select by text, and text to select. And we're going to need a few things. In order to speed up the video, I'm just going to copy the function here, and we're going to go through it step by step. So as I said, we're going to need a few things. The first thing, we have identification of all of these elements, so of the whole elements. The second one is, as we used before, all of the inputs. The good thing is we have the number of inputs matches the number of elements, which makes sense because this input is actually part of the bigger element. And we're going to use a for each loop. And what does a for each loop do? Basically, it goes through all of the elements in a list. In our case, the list is the list of labels. And it will search for the text, and once it matches the text, let me write here the text was found at index, and here we're going to add the index. And actually we're going to remove this if, or we're going to let this if, because that would mean we're going to see that our test will fail, and I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so let's do select by text. Going to do it here. Click based on text, and the text that we want to see is checkbox free, or text that we want to click is checkbox free. And let's run the test, and I'm expecting it to fail, and the reason for that is we have an extra check there in our method that unchecks or checks the, yes, we have a failure. I did find it, but our assertion failed. Perfect. The issue is the code at the moment here only performs a click if the item is not selected. So let's remove this if. And sorry, 1 second. Don't want to remove the wrong part. Okay, so remove this if, and we just leave the break. So it searches for the text, and when it finds it, it inputs this in the console. and also performs the click, and then it stops. I didn't talk about the I. The I is a variable to help us with the iteration. It basically gives us the index for the input, okay, because as I said before, the index of the element that has the text matches the index of the input that we need to click. Okay, so now that we made this change here, let's just run the test again, and this time everything should pass. And there you have it, all passed. Then this concludes the current video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one with another Selenium recipe.